Ladies and gentlemen, hope you're having a fabulous time right here with us. I take this immense pleasure to go ahead and welcome our next speaker for the day, Mr. Christopher McKenzie. A very warm welcome to you, sir. While talking about his introduction, he is an international school leader focused on curriculum and policy development. While currently completing a Doctor of Education with focus on international school leadership, I once again go ahead and welcome our next speaker, Mr. Christopher McKenzie.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Amira Khan. Much appreciated for this warm welcome, and good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. As mentioned, my name is Christopher McKenzie, and this session, we're going to be exploring some aspects about using data to inform your curriculum. Some of the objectives that we want to go to, we have two sides, it's twofold. We got our aspects about the curriculum, we have aspects about our data. And what we want to do, we want to kind of merge these two together in order to explore how data is used in conjunction with curriculum development. So during this session, we're going to be going over these two aspects and seeing how they coincide, support, and help one another or each other to develop the curriculum. So when we think about the curriculum, we have to ask, what comes to mind? What comes to mind when we think about the curriculum? Many people, they immediately think about schooling, they think about classrooms, they think about textbooks, they think about many, many things. So this is one of the first things that we really want to do, is think about exactly what comes to mind when we think about the curriculum. Who's the curriculum for? This is another aspect that we really want to delve into and consider before we begin the presentation, we begin to go any further. Is the curriculum for students? If it's for students, then what should it consist of? Is it for teachers? If so, then why would it be for teachers, and how would it benefit teachers? If it's for parents, why? And again, for the institution. So we really want to kind of go away from this binary view of the curriculum and trying to, go a bit deeper and open up some of those reflective thoughts. Most importantly, of course, the purpose of the curriculum. Why is it there? These may be questions that you've already have answers to or perceived answers to, but what we want to do, we want to kind of break down those answers that we already have and to try and open up and explore further understanding or further reasonings as to what is the curriculum. But one of the important questions is, who owns the development of the curriculum? Is this something that comes from the top down, from the administration, from the school company? If it's a company of schools, does it come from the students? Does it come from the teachers? Does it come from the textbooks? Does it come from the publishers? Who owns this development of the curriculum? As I said, all of these questions, they're there to kind of ponder over and to just get our minds thinking. So when we're looking at some of the research definitions, and what I want to approach this through a particular lens that I've developed myself. And it's not to say that this is, the be all and end all when it comes to understanding curriculum. We have Pratt's definition, which helps us to conceptualize a curriculum as a journey. It helps us to think about the word curriculum itself, meaning to run. And this foundational definition from the Latin word really gives us an idea as to that image in our mind that the curriculum is not it's not stationary, it's not static, it's something that it's moving. And when you look at that word to run, there's reasons why that word was brought into being as the curriculum and used as the curriculum. When we're looking at Godson's definition, it helps us to understand that this journey that we have, this run that we have, it's multi-faced, meaning it's not one-dimensional. There are many different aspects to this journey, to this curriculum journey that perhaps maybe we've never considered before. It's not linear. It's not something that it begins here and ends here. These are some of the aspects we want to look at, and I'd like Tom's definition as well, because Tom, he looks at the curriculum as a plan for teaching or instruction. He gives it as like a plan. So this journey that is multi-faced is something that is planned, and it has a direction, and it has a focus, and it has a a way of direction for whoever this has been created for. It gives us a good beginning to this presentation, just to lay down some of the foundations for the next 10-15 minutes. So when we're looking at frameworks, what we want to do now, what I want to do now is, I know some people, when they think about curriculums, they think about British curriculum, they think about American curriculum, they think about IB curriculum. In a sense, these are not curriculums, these are frameworks. These frameworks are used to derive the aims and goals and outcomes of the curriculum. So, as I said, the examples are the IB, International Baccalaureate, the Common Core State Standards, and the British curriculum framework. So these are some of the things that are used in order to build that curriculum. And you might find it common in the Common Core, for example, that you're required to, one of the reading standards may be to quote accurately from a text when explaining that the text says explicitly and when drawing inferences from the text. I mean, but behind that definition itself is very broad. It's never meant to be a goal of a curriculum. In fact, it's supposed to be something that is broken down and focused on and deconstructed in order to focus on one aspect of it. And likewise, you find similar things in the strands from the IB framework and the standards of the British curriculum framework as well. So as I said, all of these different aspects or these different frameworks really help us to build the curriculum. And moving on and looking at what the curriculum is not, we also want to break this myth that the book is the curriculum, the book, the textbook, this is our curriculum. Do you use Pearson's as a curriculum? Are you using Salus as a curriculum? Are you using National Geographic's curriculum? These are not curriculums. These are programs. These are books. This is very important, that the book, although it's a very important resource to support development goals of the curriculum, and it should be carefully selected, the book should be tailored to suit the needs, the contextual needs of those students and the ability needs of those students. It's designed to draw down the middle, to teach to the middle. It's very rigid when you're using a textbook as a curriculum, and it's very, it's not as easy to differentiate and guide, as we'll see when we're looking at the development of this curriculum, as we're looking at when we go through the process of curriculum refining or curriculum, redefining, if you like. So this is something that's very important. This is something that, we just want to kind of break that myth. So we've looked kind of at curriculum, and time isn't on our side when we want to go into depth as to what the curriculum is. But I hope by laying down that foundation and looking at the curriculum as a journey that is multi-faced and that is planned, I hope these things can help us to kind of get that sense of where we're going, to lay down that foundation. So that's the curriculum aspect of things. But when we're looking at data, the question comes to mind, what is data? We often think about graphs, as you see on the presentation here. You often think about different ways of linear data, of quantitative data. When you're thinking about schooling, one of the main things that we look at when it comes to data, or that comes to our minds, is the assessment data, examination data, data from formative, summative, and pre-assessments, which what we're going to go into. Who is data for is very important, and what is considered as data. These are some, again, questions that we want to think about when we're looking at data, some questions that we want to ponder over as we go into more detail about the data collection, analysis, and considerations. So when we're gathering data, we want to have, during the process, to really think about the reliability of data. What does that mean by reliable? Is this data trustworthy? Can we trust this data? If we said in grade 4 English, all of our students are achieving at 80% or above, that's a nice piece of data. But what makes us say that data is reliable? How do we know that data is reliable? What plans have been put in place? Contingencies have been laid down to make sure that we can trust this data. It's a very important point to consider, because often we just collect the data, we throw out an assessment, and we take this data on board, and we don't ever question the reliability of that data in terms of the method with which it was collected. So are the assessments robust? Have the assessments been constructed to ensure that they measure the curriculum goals? One of the things that we don't want to happen is for the, example, an assessment that's looking at drawing inferences from a text, for example, but then you're asking about the comprehension of a particular story. Or another example is when you're writing sequencing, and you're assessing sequencing and the student's ability to write sequencing, and your data is collecting their use of punctuation or their handwriting. We see that data as a number, but behind that number, we really want to get an understanding as to what is being assessed. Again, we can look at surveys. When we're looking at surveys, how surveys are constructed, how they're served, how they're distributed, and all of these things will help us to determine the perceived feelings towards the curriculum when it comes to surveys. So, asking a question like, "What is your favorite topic, and why is and why?" It's deep enough to get that important understanding to help with student choice and student voice when it comes to looking at the curriculum in itself. Further to this, it really helps the parents' understanding, and also the teachers. This is why we can use these surveys. And I really want to focus on assessment and surveys just for the purpose of this particular presentation. I don't want to go beyond those two. I want to give it in just a sample of exactly what we can do. So just so that you can carry on and have something to leave this presentation with, and perhaps pick up yourselves or develop yourselves. So does the attendance data, of course, when we're looking at the attendance data, does it include student lateness to a particular session? That attendance data itself, does it show us any other messages? Does it present any other themes? But for the purpose of this particular presentation, we're just going to stick with the assessment and survey methods of collecting data. So the process of curriculum development, what we want to look at is the curriculum aspects of curriculum development. We have some aspects or stages where we are, as we said, we're assessing when we're gathering that data. Then we're looking at the focus on, what can those students do next? But one of the most important, or two important points, is that all-important planning. That planning aspect, that's really central to developing our curriculum, refining our curriculum, because this planning helps us to direct our students towards a certain path, helps them to go towards a certain direction. It gives them the information of where they are going, or the direction. And gathered with that, or together with that, you have the instruction. Which method of instruction is being used? Generally speaking, a lot of people, they focus on project-based learning, and this is kind of like one of the fads of this decade, if you like. Project-based learning, implementing project-based learning and making learning fun, quote unquote. But when we do that, we often tend to neglect the fact that we need to give students some information in order to apply that knowledge to project-based learning. So the project-based learning looks at application of conceptual understanding or application of knowledge that they've memorized. And it's done in order to see how well they're able to use this knowledge. So, as I said, there's certain pedagogical approaches that suit certain aims of those curriculums. So that's why the instruction aspect is all important. Not to mention, your school may have a philosophy, a vision or a mission, that supports a certain type of pedagogy. And again, when we're looking at the assessment, that goes to feed back into the refining of the curriculum and to the choice of the curriculum in terms of pacing and how we're going to develop that curriculum further. So, that curriculum, it can be topic-based, it can be concept-based, or anything else. However, the best of curriculums, they tell us a story. It's often woven together, and each subject is given space to flourish, and it's often supported by evidence. Every decision that's made is based on data. So when we're looking at that development of the curriculum, you have to look at it as a process of refining and adjusting. And as I said, data is essential for this. So we've looked at the two aspects. We've looked at curriculum. We've looked at data. What we want to do, we want to just briefly explore some ways on how these two complement one another. And we're going to select these two sources of data, which will be the survey and the assessment data, and just to show us, an idea about how we can benefit from using these two sources. And we're going to keep it quite short, in about 6 or 7 minutes, inshallah. So using assessment data, I've selected 3 aspects: the pre-assessment data, the formative assessment data, and the summative assessment data. We have to remember that the curriculum itself is not set in stone. It's not something that's static. The curriculum is something that's fluid. It's able to change and support student needs. How do we understand student needs? Before we begin a journey of study or a stream of study, we look at the pre-assessments and that are being used to see what students know beforehand. It gives us some data to help us gain insights into student understanding against those planned outcomes of a particular unit or term. Using this data, we can decide whether or not it's appropriate to go deeper in some concepts or spend more time in working on foundational aspects of another topic. So an example is the water cycle. Maybe you've identified that students, they don't really understand the purpose of a cycle or the concept of a cycle. And so you may want to, after you've given that pre-assessment, you may want to look at the reasoning as to why a cycle is used for the water cycle. And again, that can be applied in grade 2. It can go all the way up to grade 9, grade 10, 11, 12, because cycles are being used. It's a very important concept in science. So once you've identified that, you may want to adjust your plans or your goals or your pacing to support the fact that these students are lacking in that particular area. Also, maybe there are some keywords that students already know. So maybe students are very aware of the key vocabulary, those key concepts. And so what you might want to do is take those students deeper into a journey for that curriculum. You may want to take them deeper into that concept. So maybe they really understand the cycle very well. And depending on where they are, from grade 2 to grade 9, 10, 11, 12, you may want to look at how that concept is applied in different areas, or you might want to provide them different aspects on how you can apply the knowledge that they've gained or that they've already understood. That's for the pre-assessment data. The formative data will help us to guide the curriculum and keep track of where students are excelling or where they're struggling. And this data, this formative data, it leaves a footprint. It leaves a footprint over time because you'll be able to see patterns to ensure that you create a more robust approach to your vertical planning. So let's say, for example, you're consistently seeing over years, 2-3 years, that students are lacking in a particular area and they're really struggling with a particular area. And you may be teaching or you may be managing grade 4, grade 5. Then you may want to go back to grade 3, to the grade 3 lead, and say to them, hey, for the last couple of years, we've seen that students are really struggling with this concept. What's going on in grade 3? That we can work together and see if we can create a better foundation. And that may lead down to further vertical planning down the grades. But the whole point is that it's not just a one snapshot and say, okay, here we are. And, okay, they did well, they didn't do well. That's it, put it on the shelf. No, this data gives us a footprint. It keeps us a record. It gives us a record. It helps us to develop further our curriculum across the grades, not just in one particular grade. So the summative data, it's essential. Okay, the summative data is essential as it shows overall whether students have actually understood what they're learning. And this helps them to reflect on the end of term and establish if learning has actually taken place. It helps us to show growth. If you have that pre-assessment data and it's assessing the same goal, and then you have the summative data that's assessing the same goal, you'll see exactly how the students have grown. But one of the most important aspects, of course, as I mentioned, is making sure that the assessments data is reliable. These assessments are reliable. They are assessing what they're supposed to be assessing. So it's, no good assessing sequencing in writing, as I said, but you've provided a rubric that provides a quantitative response or quantitative data that and behind that data, you're assessing something completely separate from what you have planned to do for the curriculum goal. This process, as we mentioned, it's ongoing. It's ongoing. Collaborative planning takes place. You share evidence with those planning, you share evidence from the data that you've collected. Discussions take place. You discuss reliability. You discuss how it's been constructed. You look at students, and all of this. It's done with an open door. It's done with an open door, making sure that everyone's confident and comfortable in speaking about what they've gathered and what they think and how they feel that the learning development can take place, with evidence from the data collected of assessments. Again, with surveys, and I know I only have a couple of minutes, but with surveys, they're a very good way to establish feedback from the school community. The survey questions could be created to indicate how students feel about a certain topic. Maybe they're not excited about a contextual text that has been selected for them to develop a reading skill or a writing skill. And because they don't feel comfortable about this text or about this topic, they are unfortunately unable to really focus on the skill to be developed. Or maybe, it's just the fact that they don't know enough. And this brings me back to the book being the curriculum. Often some of these books, especially in international schools, the texts are based on, American social studies or British social studies, and students are very much detached from that. So they really struggle to look at inferencing or, using writing to convey meaning or anything like these skills, any other skills that they're supposed to be developing. So the survey analysis, okay, you're going to have quantitative data, you may have qualitative data. You want to look at themes as to how students are, how they're developing, how they're getting on. You want to look at themes about how students are feeling. And you're just looking at these patterns to work together collaboratively to see if there's anything that really stands out. And again, what's important is that you keep records of everything that you're doing, because everything feeds back into the development of that curriculum. Anything that's connected to it, you want to make sure that you keep a record of it. So what next? The purpose of the presentation is to give you some brief ideas and details on how to begin your journey of using data to inform the curriculum. But here are some questions that you may want to consider going forward. Where are you currently? Do you have a written curriculum, or are you using a textbook? Are you textbook driven? If you have your written curriculum, have you looked at your aims and your outcomes? Are they based on a particular framework? Are they based on something internal? Are they based on national standards? Do you have data, or do you neglect its collection? Are you the kind of school or group or teacher that just, has assessments taking place, but you don't really keep track of any of the assessment data? You keep it to a side, you delete folders, you neglect the data that is being collected. Do you have data that's reliable? If you do have data, have you questioned its reliability? Have you said or understood whether or not that data is helpful for the outcome that has been planned? And one of the most important things is your team ready to take curriculum to the next level. It can't be done one person alone in an office. It has to really be done in a collaborative way, where there are different aspects, different perspectives taking place with regards to this. So we've got a couple of minutes. I will have a look at the chat box now to see if there's any questions. But if there are any questions after this, then we can continue via my WhatsApp or via my email. It's fine. I do have a question here. According to this modern era of hybrid classroom, which is better? Style of assessing students, formative assessment, and how can data help teachers to apply a pedagogy that students can apply in their real lives, what they learn? Okay, so, and this is just my opinion. This day and age of hybrid learning, it helps us. Why? It helps us, and there's benefits and there's cons as well. But if we look at the benefits of data collection, we can look at how data is collected and we can focus again on its reliability. One of the things is to make sure that the data that we're collecting isn't being done by the parent behind the camera or behind the screen or behind the computer. This is really important because a lot of students around the world right now are studying online. It's online lessons, especially in Saudi Arabia. All of the elementary schools are online. But once we've established that it's reliable, the amount of data that comes in is unbelievable. We're talking about big data, really big data, and having a system that's able to analyze that data and bring about decisions to help us to create questions or make informed decisions on that data is really, really important. But we have that formative assessment and we have the summative assessment, and both of them are, I'd say, equally important. One measures the pacing of the current teaching, and one measures the overall learning that's taken place. So the formative assessment data is essential for your day-to-day planning of lessons, the direction of where you want to take those students, where you want to slow down, speed up, and adjust as you're going along. That summative data tells you how well the students have done over that particular period of time. So both of them are equally important. They both serve different purposes. How can data help teachers to apply pedagogy so that the students can apply it in their real lives and what they want to learn? The teachers have that data at their fingertips. Teachers have the data at their fingertips. They need to be data literate these days. It's really important that you understand what your data says, what information your data is giving you. Using it to adjust your pedagogy is just as important. As I mentioned, sometimes you need that direct instruction because students really don't know basic facts. If students don't know basic facts, they're not going to be able to apply that or develop any skills. So you may want to adjust a particular or have a particular approach to your pedagogy that helps with developing those basic facts. And that's just going to be question, answer, right, wrong. However, when it comes to applying it in real lives, that's when the pedagogy would kind of change. That's when you get into deeper questioning. That's when you'd kind of create those tasks that help students to vision or visualize what this knowledge looks like in the real world and how it is applied in the real world. So all of this together really helps us to benefit from the data that's being collected and benefit not only the teachers but most importantly the students. I do hope that answers the questions sent. Are there any other questions in the chat? No? Okay. I mean, as I said, that's okay. So as I said, you can contact me via email, via WhatsApp, it's fine. And if you do need anything else, any kind of other questionings, any kind of support, then I'm ready. And I will hand it back over. Miss Samira, are you there? Samira Khan?
A session full of learning was with us. Thank you so much for sharing your inputs, and I personally believe learning never stops.